Hello and welcome back. Today we are talking photographer relationships as a videographer, working with photographers on the day, and I know there's a lot of photographers who are also watching this, so welcome. Let me know in the comments what you think, if there's anything you want to add, and we can do a part 2 of this later. So, I'm Sarah, I'm a videographer. If you haven't met me or don't know me quite yet, I've been a wedding videographer for like 10 years. I do a lot of destination work and I do a lot of local work, and I've got a small team and we love it. We love weddings, we love working with the photographers, we love everything about it. So I wanted to come on and offer some advice for my other videographer friends on how to work well with our photographer friends. As a videographer, my relationship and your relationship with photographers goes far beyond just the wedding day. In my last video, we talked about relationships with wedding planners, and I can link that in the comments in case you want to see it. But it goes so far beyond just the wedding day. Photographers are often booked really early in the booking process with couples. Same thing with the venue and the planners. Those are the 3 big vendors that people want to get locked away so that they can move on with the rest of their wedding planning. Videographers, though, we come in sometimes early in the process and sometimes later in the process. It just kind of depends on the couple. But your relationships with planners and photographers are probably the 2 most important relationships you're going to be building throughout your career as a wedding videographer. Photographers are highly, highly respected in the wedding industry. Literally, people plan their weddings around the photographers. If the photographer is not free on the date they want, they're probably going to move their date. If their photographer shoots like one style of wedding, that couple is probably going to lean towards that style of wedding. Like, it's crazy. Photographers hold so much influence, and that's a great thing because that is a lot of work. And it is a lot of pressure that we as videographers don't feel as much as they do. There's a lot of stress on photographers beyond just the actual act of producing the photos. So keep that in mind as you're going throughout planning or networking with other vendors and talking to photographers and like building those relationships with people. The photographers are important. They're a really important part of the wedding day. Literally the entire wedding day is for the photographers to take pictures. So with that said, video is also very important. We are also hired to come in and document the day with the added elements of movement and audio. And working with a photographer who's also hired to document the day can get sticky because video is kind of new to the wedding scene, and roughly half of weddings have a videographer. So a photographer may or may not actually be familiar with working with a videographer and sharing all of that time that they're used to having completely to themselves. So just know, sometimes as a videographer, when we're showing up on the wedding day, the photographer isn't always jazzed that we're there because it does make their job a little bit harder. And having a photographer on site as a videographer is just commonplace. Every single wedding has a photographer, but not every single wedding has a videographer. So we're very used to it. It's just part of our day, but our photographer friends, it's not as commonplace. So keep that in mind. They might not love that you're there. And sometimes when you walk onto a wedding day and you show up and you introduce yourself to everybody, you can feel, you can feel some weird vibes from the photographer because, again, they might not be jazzed you're there, they might not be looking forward to sharing their time, or they might have preconceived notions about what it means to work with a videographer. Because wedding photographers were used to having full control of the day, not having to keep up with anybody else or consider anybody else in their workflow, and now they do. And that's more stress on them on an already stressful day. So just keep in mind, they might not be super stoked that you're there, but that's okay because as a videographer, you can help the photographer and make their day easier. And here's a couple ways that you can do that, a couple of the ways I do that, and some of my favorite ways. So the first thing is go ahead and set up details if you can. So if you are a videographer who likes to capture details like I do, I like to put together flat lays and things like that, go ahead and save the photographer some time and gather up all those details, because the photographer is probably going to be shooting a little bit more of the getting ready than we're going to be shooting and things like that, and doing poses that we might necessarily not need. So go ahead, get those details, start setting them up in a flat lay, get the shots you need, then leave them set up for the photographer because they're going to want them. And then the next thing you can do is also just helping the photographer wrangle people. Because we know on a wedding day, it's like herding cats. Like, people wander off, people are drunk, sometimes there's other substances involved, and like, people are just not there. They're here to have a good time, they're here for the bride and groom, but they're not, like, the wedding party isn't necessarily there to be like, yes, we are invested in these pictures and videos and things like that. That's not always the case. So help your photographer friends wrangle people. So during the getting ready part, if they're trying to get all the bridesmaids together and they're in the main part of the room, but you know that there's some other bridesmaids like in the back or in the bathroom or something, just go be an extension of the photographer and go tell those other people who might not have heard the photographer in the main room, go to the bathroom, go wherever you know people are, and just say, hey, bridesmaids, groomsmen, we're going to try to do these XYZ pictures. Can you go ahead and get dressed, or whatever the photographer's instructions were? This goes a really long way, and it saves that time that you as a videographer are going to be adding to the timeline just by being there. So keep that in mind. Another thing too is try to connect with the photographers when you're moving from place to place and just ask them where they're going to be on the property. Photographers are not used to having to tell a video team, hey, we're going to go back into like the woods in this rural area to do XYZ pictures, like to do the bridal party pictures. So we'll meet you out there. They are probably not thinking that we would need to know that. They're thinking we're either going to track right along with them, or we're just going to figure it out, or a lot of them think we don't need that content. So just try to ask them when you know that they're moving from place to place, hey, where are you going so I can find you? Because as a videographer, we can't move as fast as they can, and we have to move tons of equipment everywhere that we go. So just ask them where you're going to be. Go ahead and let the photographer go. Don't make them wait for you. That's not their job. They're here to do their job, not your job. So just catch up with them when you can, because there's going to be plenty of content for you to get when you get there. Another thing too that pops up that can be stressful is when you have to mic up people. So let the photographers know before the first looks, and anything where you have to get a microphone on somebody, just say, hey, I've got to get a microphone on the groom or someone to do this event. So please don't start it before I give you the okay. Now, some photographers don't love that because it can slow them down. However, this is one of those instances where you, the videographer, have been paid to do a job and you have to do it at whatever expense. And getting audio is one of those, like, you cannot compromise on that. It has to happen. So go ahead and be assertive with the photographers who you're working with on that day without being rude, because again, you don't want to cause tension. Just let them know, hey, I got to get a mic on these people. I'll give you a nod when we're ready, and then we can start this event. And I've never had a photographer give me an attitude about it. They've all been very nice. But say what you need, because they don't know. They are overwhelmed trying to get through their shot list and make everything perfect, and they're handling a lot more emotions on the wedding day than we are. The couple is a lot more emotionally invested typically in their photos than they are their video. And some of that is because video is so new to the wedding world that couples really don't know what to do with us, but they know what to do with the photographers. There's a lot of stress on the photographers, and the photographers are wrangling people, like I've mentioned before. So they're handling a lot on the wedding day. So just try to communicate with them. And then as we're moving through the wedding day, we're going to come up on the ceremony. So just ask them nicely, hey, what's your ceremony plan? Are you going to be in the aisle? Do you like to walk around a lot? And let them know where you're going to be setting up your cameras. Ask them if your camera placement is okay, because as videographers, we can move our cameras back. And you should have an array of very zoomy lenses, some 70 to 200s, probably multiple 70 to 200s just for the ceremony. So just ask like, hey, is my camera placement okay? Let me know. Make sure that you're out of their shots when they're getting the wide shots, and try not to set up your cameras directly in the aisle, because the photographers are going to be up and down the aisle and you don't want your camera in their shots. So try to set up that aisle cam way back. Yes, the photographer is going to get in that shot and you're going to lose a lot of content from the day in that angle. However, when it's clear, it's a beautiful angle. So just have the multiple cameras set up. When the photographer is in front of one camera, switch to the other. It's not that hard. It's just part of the game. Another thing you can do is be mobile with the photographer. So get a monopod or be on a gimbal and just stay shoulder to shoulder with them. Don't get in front of the photographer, because now you're in the photographer's shots. And the same thing, don't stand back behind the photographer and let them get in your shots if you can just be right beside them. It works really well. So try to stay mobile, get your cameras out of their way, let them get the photos they need to get, and we need to be the more flexible ones on the wedding day, even though the actual act of like videoing and producing a video is a lot more involved. The stakes are higher for our photographer friends. So it's kind of, you have to balance that with them. Moving on to the reception and portrait time and all the stuff that happens after the ceremony, us as videographers, we have to move a ton of equipment. We have to unplug audio equipment. We got to get mics off people and reset up everything for the reception. And this is a really stressful time for a lot of videographers. If you have two people, so if you're a videographer and you're shooting with a second shooter, this is a great time to just send whoever is a better filmmaker with like the bridal party and let them go get portraits, while the other person who's maybe better at setting up audio and environmental type stuff, they go and get the reception set up. So try to divide and conquer as much as you can to save time. But if you're a solo shooter, go ahead, let the photographer go off. Just ask them where they're going to be. Go get all of your stuff set up and moved into the reception space. Plug up your audio, get that ready, and then go meet the photographer later. You might lose a little bit of content or maybe some moments, but in the end, as long as you can set up quickly, you're not going to lose that much content. They're probably going to be doing family photos anyway, which most videographers, we don't capture a ton of that. We might pop in for a couple group shots here and there, but this is a really good buffer time for you as the videographer to go and set up and save that time. Now, when you're doing portrait hour with your photographers, this is where things can get dicey. The photographer is usually going to be given a shot list from the couple, and it's a stressful time. So they're going to be sitting there like, oh my gosh, I have to get through the shot list. We don't have a lot of time. Maybe things got pushed back, or maybe it's just a really tight timeline. The pressure is on for them. Again, as videographers, no one really knows what we're doing, so no one expects a ton out of us. They just want a really good end product. And so to deliver that for them, we have to get the shots we need as well. This is where, going back to the planning process, if you can get involved in the timeline planning process, maybe you can build in just like 5 or 10 minutes for video specific shots. But if not, or if there's not a lot of time, or you don't have a designated time slot, just shoot right along with the photographer. Maybe let them know if the photographer is not giving you time or checking in with you, seeing if you've gotten shots, or if the photographer is someone who only does static poses with no movement. As the videographer, it's your job to speak up for yourself and to say, hey, we need a little bit of movement. So maybe between every couple shots, can I just get like one pose? Or just say, can I get 5 minutes at the end to just do a bunch of movement type things, so that you can get what you need quickly while leaving tons of time for the photographer. And then you can also shoot right beside the photographer, or in the in-between moments that the couple is, like the photographer is working the couple in and out of their poses. These are all really great ways that you can stay out of the way and give the photographer lots of time while also getting what you need. So now we go to the reception space, and usually during the receptions is great. Like, this is a relaxed time for a photographer for the most part. They just kind of get to shoot the events and document them as they're happening. But as a videographer, this is our bread and butter time. We have to make sure that our shots are on lock, our audio is good. We get a lot of content during the reception. So as you're doing that, you might be setting up lighting. Just okay it with the photographer. If the photographer is shooting with a flash, their flash is going to overpower your lighting anyway, so it shouldn't be an issue for them. If they're not shooting with a flash, usually they love when I bring out the video lighting because it helps them focus quicker and better, and it improves their images. So your lighting should never be a problem with the photographer. It might be a problem with the DJ because they might want some kind of ambiance or something going on. So you can run it by them and run it by the planner and just like make sure it's okay with everybody. But in the end, you're hired to produce your service. So you need to stick up for yourself. If someone does say they have an issue with it, just say, okay, well, I need it for video. So I'm going to have it on during this event. Then I'll turn it right off. And that's always a great compromise, especially during the dancing part. Sometimes the DJs really want their lighting instead of any kind of artificial lighting. It might not look as great, but if it's going to cause tension, it's not worth it. So do what you got to do and make sure you're getting that crisp audio and you're capturing the days as they happen. Now, when you are shooting an event with a photographer and a videographer, try to keep tabs on where the photographer is going. Because if you're shooting onto an event and the photographer is in the background, you cannot edit them out. They can edit you out, but you cannot edit them out. So try to stay on the same side with them because the photographer doesn't want to have to edit you out either. That's work on their end that they shouldn't really have to do. So try to stay beside them. So that way you're not getting in the background of their shots. They're not getting in the background of your shots. You're staying together. You're working as a team and just kind of follow them around. It's not that hard. Try to have some kind of mobile camera set up, so a monopod or a gimbal so that you can move with them. And then you're going to do the same thing for the grand exit. And then at the end of the wedding day, I like to just reach out on Instagram and just be like, hey, thanks, that was such a fun day. Make sure you're liking and resharing their pictures that they're posting from the wedding day. When you finish your film, you can send it out to the photographer and the planner and everybody and just be like, hey, here's the film. We finished it. Thanks for an awesome day. And then they can see like, wow, working with that videographer was a great experience because they were kind and courteous and out of the way. They sent us the film at the end so that they can maybe cross-post it if they want to. They can do anything they want with it and they can just see the end product and how amazing it is and everything like that. It's just a great way to network. So those are my tips as a videographer to try to stay out of the photographer's way. I hope it helps. I've also got a guide for photographers on how to kind of understand the video process a little bit as well and to help photographers know what to expect with a videographer on site. And I'm going to do another video that's coming from a videographer's perspective, talking directly to a photographer. So you can be on the lookout for that. It's coming out here in the next couple weeks. But for now, I will see you next time.